Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2021 FedEx Cup playoffs, the first event, which is the Northern Trust. This is the preview show. And first and foremost, thank you for stopping by and spending a few moments with me. I've got a lot to cover for this. Of course, we're kicking off the FedEx Cup playoffs. I'm going to go into all that. We're going to go over a little bit of the recap of the Wyndham, and I'm not going to spend much time there because we've got a lot to discuss about the upcoming playoffs and, of course, the Northern Trust. Going to break down the course, the skill rankings of the players we're going to be looking at, showing you all kinds of models and analysis that I've already done. And guess what? DraftKings pricing just got dropped, and so that's going to be incorporated. I've also got what I've added new is my early favorite bets, so hold on tight. Give me about 45 minutes or so. I'll get you through all this. And hey, this is my 1-year anniversary. And with that said, I've got a giveaway to promote that. Well, to actually celebrate that, we'll say. And what is this giveaway I'm doing? This is for the FedEx Cup playoffs. I've already kind of started this, and thank you for everybody that's already participated. But in short, what am I doing? I am going to give away to one lucky subscriber $1,000 little bonus. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for attending. No matter if you were my first subscriber or if you are brand new to the show, everybody's going to get in this. And oh, by the way, if I do get to 1,000 subscribers, which I'm only a couple hundred, less than a couple hundred subscribers away, I'm going to double it. I'm going to go ahead and make it $2,000. So it'll be 2 lucky winners. So that's new. And all you need to do to get in this giveaway is real simply subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, if you already are, you're already set. All you need to do then is click the like button and tell me in the YouTube comments below, who do you think is going to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? I'm going to take all those entries, put them in this random generator, and whoever it spits out, that's the winner. Now, again, if I get to 1,000 subscribers, which gives us about 3 weeks, then I'm going to go ahead and double it and pick 2 winners. Okay. With that said, let's talk a little bit about the Wyndham. Again, we had a pretty interesting tournament for the Wyndham, as in, another 54-hole leader fell apart, and just so happens that was one of my main guys. Had a big bet on him that stung. We'll talk a little more about that. And of course, I'm sure Vegas was very excited to see that Kevin Kisner won, because I had money on Siwoo Kim. I think everybody had money on a lot of the guys, even maybe Grace. I doubt Adam Scott, but I don't think a lot of people had money on Kevin Kisner. But congrats to him. Of course, it's been a while since we've seen Kevin really do anything. And with that said, I had to pull this up for you guys just so you could quickly see, he's missed, I think, about half of the tournaments he's played on since March. And you could see nothing. The course that I thought he could actually show up was at WGC, the event before at St. Jude. I just thought that fit him. I mean, and I said this course fits him too, but his game was just so far kind of not showing anything. His last, he kind of popped up on our radars at the Travelers and the Rocket. That was his best 2 finishes for the season. And then, nothing at the Open, which, I don't think anybody really was looking at Kevin Kisner for the Open. But, at St. Jude, I think things pointed to him. I think people are on him. And then, of course, got burned. I mean, he made the cut, but didn't do anything. You can see losing strokes everywhere but around the green, even on putting, which is typically where Kisner needs to make his hay. So with that said, that was not expecting it. Again, we had a 6-man playoff. If you watched it, of course, you had Kim, Grace, you had Scott, you even had Sloan, the Canadian, and of course, my guy Henley, who, all he needed to do was make a 1-foot putt early on and he would have been in the playoff, or just, shoot 1 under. He would have, shot 1 under, he would have won the tournament. But I've been, kind of funny enough, I had a lot of hits there. And then, of course, I mentioned about the Sam Burns. He missed the putt to win, so that had been nice. And then, of course, Henley missed. And, again, another – and then – but, I mean, if you had money on Adam Scott to win outright, man, you would have been even more hurting than I was. So, anyways, it kind of – I'm not going to dive into all the analysis of the players just because, the field's going to be so different in what we're going into. I mean, there's going to be guys, of course, crossover. But I just don't think it's applicable, the Wyndham, comparative to where they're going to play. So that's really it on the recap. Shift our focus, change over, and let's go talk about the FedEx Cup playoffs. So that said, for some people that might be newer to betting on golf, or just, maybe don't really understand the FedEx, I thought I'd throw this in there So, long story short, the PGA just felt like to end their season, they needed more than just, hey, a tournament's over. That's the end of the season. Let's start a new season. Of course, they created this FedEx Cup playoff. It's a whole point-based system. And long story short, it's calculating all your points throughout which we just have as a super season. It's calculating, of course, if you win or your placement points. It's calculating birdies, eagles, all that. And it's tracking it through your whole career on how many events you played during that season. Long story short, at the end, it's going to kick out who had the most points, and it takes the top 125. Those guys get into the Northern Trust, and then we start whittling it down. Almost, I don't know, it's like March Madness, but it does start to whittle it down. So then the top 70 after the Northern Trust, so whoever makes it from the 70 above, of course, then makes it to the PGA Championship. Pretty much cut that in half or more. And that's who's going to East Lake to play in the Tour Championship. And then that's a whole nother discussion where, depending on where you are in the rankings, you come in with already a negative stroke. So, 10 under to start the tournament. So you're ahead by a lot going in. And typically, the person that is, coming in the first position is probably going to win that tournament unless they just totally have a disaster. So that's just a very high level overview. I just want to give you some bit of understanding of how this all works. And then with that said, I'll just give you guys some of the latest and greatest news coming out of the PGA. What I thought was interesting is Louis Oosthuizen is the only one that made this top 125 that is not going to be in the field. He pulled out of the Wyndham due to a neck strain or whatever. I think we all know the stories that he travels with his own mattress and has had back problems here and there. So it looks like he tweaked his neck. And, it's not a huge deal. It's not that Louis is not going to make it to the BMW because he's so far up the ladder that he could even take a tournament off. And if you remember last year, Webb Simpson did this. I think he skipped the BMW, if I remember correctly, just, said, hey, I don't need it to get to East Lake. Even though it could affect it, but it could have been also, might have been the TPC Boston Northern Trust. I don't remember exactly. But all I'm trying to tell you is don't worry that Louis won't be in the rest of the events unless he is really hurting. This could be more of, hey, I'm just going to take another week off, let it get better, and then focus on the BMW and, of course, the Tour Championship. Kind of another side note, which if you've been watching golf and listening, of course, a lot of people have talked about this, that, a lot of people were thinking Will Zalatoris, it would, be kind of nice if he would have won the Wyndham, just because then he could have got into FedEx Cup playoffs. He's got the most points in the whole PGA that is actually, not able to, he would have been 29th, as you see there. That will not be able to attend the playoffs just because he had conditional PGA status. He was not a full member, of course, going into the new season. So starting off with, I believe it is, I think the Safeway that we kicked the season off with, he will be a full PGA Tour member at that time, but will not be in the FedEx Cup playoffs. So if you're looking for him to bet or to play on DFS and you can't find him, that's the reason why. And then last but not least, we'll look at the guys that, so there was some people that made moves. So you got 3 guys that moved out of the top 125. Of course, Ryan Armour, who was a pick of mine, just did not produce. Also, Bo Hoag, who was a pick of mine, also missed the cut. And then you had Patrick Rogers. So those weren't very good. Then on the flip side, you had Roger Sloan, of course, with that great, second place or tie finish, ties second. You had Scott Piercy, who all of a sudden, the Barracuda and at the Wyndham has played really well. I was not really expecting Scott Piercy to do as good as he did because he's just been so volatile. But hey, I give him credit. So he made it in. And then, of course, Chesson Hadley, who was one of my bets that I kind of pointed you guys on that, it was a 300-1. It was a super long shot. But the guy had a crazy Sunday, made the cut, had a crazy Sunday, had that hole-in-one, his first hole-in-one as a PGA player. I think he shot a 62. So if you had him on Showdown Finale, which I didn't put a ton in on Showdown Finale, but I did not have him, but he would have been one of the key guys you needed to win some decent cash that. Okay, I think that's all you need to know about the FedEx Cup playoffs. Let's now go focus specifically on the Northern Trust. Okay, so this is the first event of the leg. Of course, they're going to the Jersey Shore, which is Jersey City, New Jersey. They played here back in 2019, and of course, it is at Liberty National. Last year was at TPC Boston, where DJ went out and just plowed the field. I mean, literally, I think he shot 30 under. It was one of those tournaments where it was pretty much over after Saturday. This course has hosted the Northern Trust slash, it used to be called the Barclays back in 2009, 2013, and then also we had a President's Cup there back in 2017 where the U.S. won. It has been officially the Northern Trust at this place 2019, 2021. You've got architects Bob Cup and Tom Kite. And if I remember correctly off the top of my head, Patrick Reed has won the actual event called the Northern Trust twice, and DJ has won it twice. And then you got Bryson DeChambeau. So that's your last 5 winners. But you got to remember, they moved the course. So we have to keep a focus on just Liberty National. So don't get so hung up on the Northern Trust name. We got to, again, focus more on the actual course we're playing. And with that said, we are going to be playing a par 71. It's a little longer than it has been in 2019. We're going to talk about that, but it's coming in at 7,400 yards plus, so 7,410. The fairways are bent grass. The rough is short, but there's not a whole lot of rough. It's pretty much, if you think of it almost as like a first cut, and then you're pretty much going into like a fescue or a tall native grass. So, when you see the rough at 1.5, don't think, oh, this should be easy. It's actually going to be a very difficult test for these guys. I'll get a little more into that. And then in the greens are A4 bent grass. I only put that because there is a couple other courses that will leverage the A4 bent grass. So something that, you can look at if you're going into that kind of detail. I think if you just stick with bent grass, you're fine. And I've already kind of mentioned the player fields, the top 125 that came out of the FedEx points, and they're going to cut this down to 70. The historical cut line you really can't do because it again is going off point base. And so I put this example up there that, literally last year, Patrick Rogers made the cut and shot 7 over, where like a Tony Finau didn't. And all it it's all about where your points at, how many points you accumulate, and then it's going by the points kind of thing. So just something to keep in mind. Your winning scorer in 2019 was Patrick Reed at 16 under at Liberty National. And then the last time it was played here, which, it's kind of hard to look at a lot of this information, but just so you know, Adam Scott won in 2013. Those 2 winners right there can kind of just give you a little understanding that ball striking is going to be key. Back in 2013, Adam Scott was one of your best tee to green players out there. And then your average green side is going to be a little bit smaller than the average PGA Tour green. So again, if you've been with me, 5,000 square feet is about the median average. Anything below that is smaller. So like if you get into, you think of Pebble Beach, some of the smallest greens around. And then you got number of sand bunkers, 98. So there's quite a bit of sand out here. And then you've got 13 water hazards. And from what I could figure out looking at the map, it looks like about that water actually comes into play on 10 holes. That water includes ponds and, winding streams. You could almost count this as a little bit coastal. I think it runs off like the Hudson. So you have that skyline of downtown Manhattan. It's actually a really cool course with a really cool backdrop. With that note, it was also hard to really find courses that compare to this. I saw different things. I mean, you could think of Kiowa Island has some similarities, or even Palmetto. But actually, as like a par 71 bent 7,400 yards, there's not a ton out there. But I do have some comp course stuff we're gonna leverage to help us kind of push us over the edge on the guys that we want to play. And then of course defense. I kind of already mentioned a lot of this, but I'll just summarize it. Small slopey greens, they're very difficult. So putting is definitely key. I mentioned the water and the streams. Again, if you're not hitting fairways here, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be almost like the Open we just saw. You're going to be in that high fescue native grass. And there is long par 4s. There's a bulk of 5 of them that are probably the crux. If you can manage those 5 every day, you're going to do pretty well. And then there's also some longer par 3s. Like I said, that was one of the big changes. I'll talk about that in a second. And then just some side notes. Kevin Chappell holds the course record here, which is he's not in the field, but shot a 62 in 2013. Just a side note. Again, I think I kind of mentioned it's going to come down to ball strikers, guys that hit the longer irons, hit fairways, but you got to do everything. This is, we're kind of off the John Deere and the Wyndham, kind of forget all of that. We are back to tough golf courses where, the cream is going to rise at the crop. And so that's what we're going to have to really kind of hone in on. So Liberty National, this was kind of the best stuff I could find to give you guys an overhead and kind of an understanding. If you've never seen this course, again, this is where I tell you, hey, go to YouTube, type in Northern Trust 2019, round 1 highlights, go through the different rounds. You're going to see that Troy Merritt came out just firing. And if you know Troy Merritt's game, I always kind of think of him as a Corey Connors. Just kind of very stable, steady, does hit the longer, the fairway woods, the longer irons well. It's the putter that typically will hurt them. But you can kind of see, as I mentioned with the water, 6-7, 5-6-7. You can see how water they moved in all over. You can see how water gets into play here. You can see all this brown is all that fescue I was talking about. Water on 18. You can see water off the tee on 1 if you hooked it, or if you're a lefty, if you faded it. Water can come into play here on 12. Shouldn't come into play on 13. But anyways, you kind of get the gist, just kind of getting an overview. But again, I only do this so you get a kind of accustomed to thinking of what does this course actually look like in play. And then, of course, we're here to the right. I think it gives you a way better example. Again, you can kind of see that if you're not in the fairway, you're going to be in some trouble. You're going to be in sand. You're going to be in fescue. Maybe not even find your ball. So we're going to need guys that are hitting fairways. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to need guys that a lot of long approaches coming in. So here's the scorecard. Now, this is from 2019, and then I went and pulled also the actual official scorecard for this event. And what I noticed is literally every hole is gain distance. The big one that I noticed is number 4, this par 3. So let's just real quick look at the handicaps so you can see if you're doing showdown. You can look at it as 2 different ways. Let's, get the guys acclimated, let them get going. Get the guys that are going off the front. Hopefully by then they're hitting well, they've got some confidence, and then they're going to make this turn in where they get to 9, 10, 11. You've got number 15 and you got 18. So the toughest holes are definitely on the back. I'd say more of kind of a gentler handshake kind of if you're off the front. But you also got some scoring opportunities on the back. You got, the par 5, number 13. Of course, the easiest hole, which is, hopefully your eagle chance. You can see here almost 7% eagles on number 6. So there is some things out there, and we'll go into more about how they're going to have to attack this course. But long story short, I'm just telling you, everything has been lengthened since the last time they played here. And with that said, this is the official scorecard. And I mentioned number 4 is now 205 yards as par 3. Now, I'm guessing they have multiple tees. And depending on where they, decide to put the tee markers, that's going to dictate. But I did not have par 3s really loaded in. But the more that I kind of looked at number 2, it's over 200 yards. Number 4 can play over 200 yards, even though it shows up as last year around 150. And then you also have number 11 playing at 230. And then really the only, one that's showing, and I think is still, from 2019 is this 150 number 14, which I believe is their signature hole. I think that's the one that you're teeing off, and the landscape in the back is, of course, looking at Manhattan. So it's a pretty cool hole. But with all that added up, of course, when you have a par 71 at 7,400 yards, that is a test of golf. If it was a par 72, you have a little more. You have another par 5. But considering you only have the 3 par 5, just had to confirm that. It's going to be difficult. On that note, going to past course conditions, just so you can look this, I pulled up 2019 and 2013, of course, both Liberty National. The greens are fast. I told you they're slopey, they're rolling. You got to navigate them, and they're smaller. So if you're on them, 3-putt avoidance is not a big thing here, but to actually get up and down and make your putts is going to be crucial. You can see got pretty firm greens at the end of 2019. Must have some warmer conditions. Trying to see anything else sticks out to me. It's kind of funny. It does say hitting fairways is easy. So, that speculating is that, the little wider fairways. But if you're not hitting the fairways, you are going to be in trouble. All right. That's enough for past course conditions. Let's talk about how do you actually win this thing and going off of course, past history. The good news is we have seen people play at this course and see how they've done. Now, we don't have a ton of data or recent data, but we have enough that you can start to say, hey, this is the things that people have done well. And with that said, the first thing that came up that I see is ball striking is going to be my number 1 stroke gain analysis ranking, the thing that I'm going to put the highest amount of weight on. Always approach. You're going to have to hit approach well, of course, to score. Off the tee. Now, I was all over with this. I was good at good drives. Doesn't worry about distance. It just worries about the guys that put it in play and hit the green on approach. And then you've got driving distance combined with fairways gained is a good, but really that's off the tee. How off the tee is measured and who hits the ball the furthest off the tee, but is also hitting fairways. So you know what? I don't use off the tee a lot, but I think here it is applicable and makes sense. Also, kind of shortens all the different areas that they look at through the model. Of course, putting is always crucial. Around a green, and I'm going to show you through past winners, this shows up. It is something that they do well. And then the proximity of the pins that I'm going to be looking at, you've got 31% of the shots coming in 200 plus. And then you've also got 175 to 200, 21% of the shots. So those are going to be the key proximity of the pins. I mentioned that bulk of long par fours, the 450 to 500s. There's 5 of them. That's going to be a key indicator of who will do well, who's managed those in the past. Like I said, I added the par threes once I noticed that hole number 4, I believe it is, changed about 40-50 yards. So again, that could be the way they tee it up. But for right now, off the official scorecard, that's what I got to go with. So I'm guessing they moved it. Either they added an extra tee to that to make that an extra 50 yards. And then you got those 2 gettable par 5s where they need to be able to strike. I'm going to be looking at that. And then last but not least, I'm going to throw in birdie or better opportunities gained. This is definitely not going to be a scoring fest from everything that we've seen in the past. But I want to see the guys, if you're getting opportunities, who are the guys that are getting that because they're hitting the longer irons in. They're hitting, on the par 3s closest, closer to the pin. So all that will be kind of brought out by opportunities gained. Okay, past winners. So we have 2 of them at this actual event. I mentioned Patrick Reed, of course, in 2019. And you also had Adam Scott win. I believe it was in a playoff back in 2013. And if I click, the one thing I saw, again, and all this says is that they've got to do really well from tee to green. And that's ball striking pretty much. You got to be able to hit it off the tee, hit fairways. You got to be able to hit the greens. And then really you could kind of see that there's kind of a mix on off the tee. You can see approach, that kind of flip-flop where Reed did really well off the tee, which is a little bit shocking, but at this time, right, he was hitting the draw predominantly, but I think he was doing that kind of Arnold Palmer windmill kind of fade at that time, which now he's naturally hitting a fade. So his approach was lower where you flip it. Scott didn't really gain a ton off the tee, but really gained it on approach. But the one thing that they both consistently did well was around the green. And of course, the putting kind of flip-flop because, if you're hitting your approach within 3 feet, 4 feet, you're going to lose on your putting stats because you're not making those 20, 30 footers. Flip that around. Of course, Patrick Reed was not hitting as close to the pin and had to gain a little more with the putter. So the 2 things I took out of this just to kind of confirm was around the green is important. And also, you got to be good all the way through tee to green. So recent form did this a little different than usual because if I just pulled up the past 12 rounds with no filters, we would have got some of the guys that were playing well over the last, we'll call them the more simpler events, right? Like I mentioned, you had, you have Rocket Mortgage not too long ago. We had the John Deere. We had the 3M, which I don't say 3M is super easy, but it's a 20 or under event. And we're going to talk a little bit about the 3M because I think there is some correlation there. But so anyways, what I did for recent form, of course, that larger, all those stroke gain skill rankings, I would have had built a large model. And you're going to see here, all those things we talked about are listed up here. And then I weight them. And what that does is then it kind of filters out the 125 people we're looking at. I made ball striking the highest at 20%, approach at 15, putting at 10, those proximities 5 each, the long par 4s, the par 5s. You can kind of see how I weighted it. But I did add a filter in, and what I did is I plugged in, I wanted courses that were 7,400 or more to put this data against. And there's still, quite a few courses that pop up that are pretty relative, right? But you're going to see like Rory becomes number 1 because, of course, Quail Hollow is, Wells Fargo where he won, fits that kind of criteria. But what it did is it just kind of weeded out some of the easier tournaments. So you're getting data, even though it says the past 12 rounds, probably through like the last 4 or 5 months of the season. But I'm okay with that because, like I said, that's what I wanted to see because it really was going to give me the guys that are doing these things well on the courses that are actually difficult or more difficult. So it just gives you some names. You can see Brooks Koepka, great ball striker, Sergio Garcia. And then I could look at this and I could say, okay, here are guys that do fit this mold. Of course, Charlie Hoffman had a great run this year. I don't think Charlie won the whole year, but boy, he was always a lot of contentions. You got Griot, great ball striker, not a great putter. So what you'll notice here is, even though I have putting set at 10%, you're still getting a lot of guys that hit the ball very well, but can be very on and off with a putter. So with that said, what I wanted to also do is just show you, here's the guys. If I removed that filter and took the last 24 rounds with that model, just to give you, so, and that's what I said, you're going to get the Seamus Powers pop up. Of course, Sammy Burns recently in the playoff. Um, who else kind of shows up here that's been kind of hot recently? I think that's really the only two that I would say, Seamus Power and Burns, with the recent form, kind of got yanked up in this one. But Burns is good. He's a solid player. I mean, from tee to green, so I don't really have a problem with that. And Seamus Power has just been playing amazing golf for the last at least 6 events he's played in. So you can't really argue. But again, you can kind of just compare and contrast what I just showed you when you filter 7,400, and then if you remove that filter, what does it look like? So again, screenshot that or do whatever you want, but this gives you kind of a good first pass on the guys that you might want to look at. And then, usually I do history at the course. The problem is I've only really got 2 years that would pull data, and to pull 2013 just doesn't make sense. So instead, what I did is I just went on there, filter strokes gained, so you could just go see the top 10 guys that lead it, in 2019 from a stroke gain. Abraham Answer makes sense. I just think Reed, he plays tough courses well, but he just has not been in the form that I would want to see Reed. So I'm not really going to be looking a whole lot at Reed. But hey, you could make an argument for, Adam Scott is, found a little bit of life here, of course, shown at the Wyndham. Jordan Spieth's been playing really well. Snedeker, forget that. He's just not playing the golf that he did, so you can just remove that name. But I mean, he did well a couple of years ago. Louis Oosthuizen, of course, I mentioned is not going to be in the field. But we will probably definitely see him at the BMW unless there is some really major issue. Then Justin Rose has also shown some life, of course, at the Wyndham and recently. So, again, just some names. And HV3, Harold Varner, solid tee to green guy. It's just, around the green and putting. And now, by the way, how did he do? 1.4, then, of course, you can see the bunny. But you can see he went en fuego on approach. And so did Louis. All right. Anyways, it just gives you a little more information. The next thing I always do is my comparable courses. Again, I'm doing this a little different because I said this course I think it's pretty unique. So what I'm looking at is this is comparing no-cut tournaments is this model here, but then I'm going to talk about the tournaments I'm going to be looking at. So real simply in Fantasy National, you can click, there is a filter that says no-cut events. And if you put in for the last 24 rounds against my model, these are the guys that pop up. And this list is pretty solid. Of course, DJ, Rahm, Hatton, and of course, this is pulling up even like the CJ Cup, the Zozo, WGC events, just to give you an idea of where this information would be coming from. Also, Tournament of Champions would get pulled in here. And so, long story short, that gives you, I think, a better understanding of the cream of the crop that will rise to the top and who does the best. And of course, DJ is up there, of course, who, like I said, just destroyed the field last time, but that was at TPC Boston. Even though if you look at TPC Boston and look at the actual stats, it looks very similar. So it's a par 71. It's 7,350 yards. And it also is A4 bent greens. But the way that course plays and the way this course plays is very different. So long story short is we can look at it. We can leverage and just take a look at what happened in 2020. But I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in it. The BMW Championship, I think that's something you kind of believe that's Olympia Fields. That's a par 70, almost 7,400 yards, and that's like a bent / POA greens, and it plays pretty tough. It's a little, so I think we can leverage that. And then like the tournaments that I think that make the most sense that the PGA plays typically, you got the Memorial at Murfield, so that's a par 72, 7,500 yards. That's a bent green. Water comes into play on 13 holes. So I think that's, again, you have to keep it, within the boundaries. Now, it's not the high fescue, but it's tough rough, and you got some trees there. You got Riviera, where they play the Genesis. Now, that's POA, but it is a par 71, over 7,300 yards, and it's a tough track. And so, again, when I'm just trying to figure out who can do well at, longer, tough tracks in a tough field, that's the tournaments that we're going to leverage. Same with the API. Maybe a little less as in what the field that plays there. But again, kind of similar from, you got to keep it in play. Water comes in, I believe, on like 9 holes. It is a par 72, but it's almost 7,500 yards. Of course, that's at Bay Hill. The difference is that is Bermuda Greens. And then funny enough, the 3M is probably the closest tournament, I think, it's a par 71. It's like 7,400 yards. Water comes into play, I believe that's like on, 15 holes. So from a playability, and we just saw them there at TPC Twin Cities, but a lot of these guys don't play to 3M, so we can't really get a good gauge, but we could maybe find some sleepers from a DFS perspective there, or even some of your long shot bets. Also, the Honda Classic, that's only a par 70 and it plays shorter. It's only like 7,100 yards, but water comes into play on 15 holes. It's a tough track to play, but that's also Bermuda. So, I mean, again, I guess you're just going to kind of filter and just see where some of these guys pop up. I'm going to look at WGC events, of course. That's your typically top 80 players from around the world. It's a no-cut event. Even though what we're talking about, there is a cut. So don't get me wrong, on this first event, there is a cut. But I think, again, it's just going to show you the cream that rises to the crop. And then recently in the fall that just passed in 2020, we had the CJ Cup and the Zozo. If you remember right, the CJ Cup was at Shadow Creek. That was a par 72, but it was 7,500 yards. It was a long track. It was bent. And, of course, Kokrak won that. And then you got the Zozo that was played at Sherwood, where that was bent greens, but it was a shorter track. And I'd say easier than Shadow, but it was a par 72. So, anyways, those are the things that I'm going to look at as I'm, not only I'm looking at analysis, but these are the courses and information I'm going to use and just want you guys to have it too. So with that said, if we want to go ahead and just look at the best ball strikers over the past 24 rounds, no filter on this. This is just who's striking the ball the best. Of course, Morikawa, Koepka, Keegan Bradley pops up. He, again, like a Corey Connors, great tee to green, typically very streaky. When I say streaky, mostly bad with the putter, which you can see here, ranked 112th in this field. You got Hideki, again, under that mold, great ball striker, right? He had he was in the playoff, and I always mix the tournaments, previous tournaments. What was that? Was that the 3M? Doesn't matter. Just the previous tournament where my boy Burns missed a putt, and of course, WGC. Sorry, that was the St. Jude. And that course you could actually look a little bit at too. I think there's some similarities there. Patrick Cantlay, you could see his putter is not where it was. You're going to see a lot of guys here that, just hit the ball really well tee to green. Just if they have that putting weekend, they could do a lot. And then last on that note, who are actually the good, the best bent putters we've seen over the last 24 rounds? Again, the only filter here is that I did put bent greens on, of course, would make no sense not to. And of course, funny enough, Kokrak comes up, and that is pulling in, of course, that when I looked at the CJ Cup, because again, it's just the courses that have bent green. So there's only, 4 or 5 courses that these guys will play a year each that are bent. Troy Merritt's interesting. When you go watch the round 1, round 2 highlights of this event in 2019, he actually came on, I think he shot like low 60s, like a 63 or kind of crazy for Troy Merritt, but just a total side note. But you can see when he's on bent, I think he could be a sneaky play from a DFS perspective, to actually, pick the win. I don't know if I go there, but maybe top 20. I don't know what his odds are going to be for that, but something to look at. You got Patty Kazire. I'm kind of glad for whatever, he missed a cut at the Wyndham and I did not pick him. I think I did put a small bet on him, but yeah. There's my Brian Stewart, who has been doing a lot with the putter. Of course, Cam Davis, I think, great ball striker, and he has been showing up. So, right, he won the Rocket Mortgage, which is bent green. So that's also an event I'll be put in here. And like even Lucas Glover. So you're going to get these guys pulled in. The John Deere at TPC Deere Run is also bent green. So, these guys are going to pop when it looks at bent. But it is over 24 rounds. I didn't do the last 12. I made it a larger sample size. So give you a little, and then of course, Tringali coming in second, who just had some good finishes on bent greens. Hasn't won this year at all. But anyways, gives you an understanding of who the guys are that can putt really well on bent. And now, last but not least, let's talk about some of my favorite bets. So, right now, I think on DraftKings Sportsbook, the betting stuff is not out yet. But I was able to go track down some odds. Even Odds Checker is not up yet for betting. But with that said, the first guy that I thought of at this tournament, who this just seems like a perfect spot for Schauffele to get a win. He's 20-1. He's got the full game. He does everything well. He would probably be right now, without doing crazy analysis. I've done some analysis. Would probably be my number one guy in from a betting perspective. I like Scotty Scheffler. Again, it's going to come down to the putter with him, but the guy has just been ball striking the hell out of the ball. So 30-1, I like Scotty Scheffler. Jason Kokrak, I just showed you, he's had probably the last couple tournaments, the putters went a little south on him, but the guy is still an elite ball striker, and he has shown that he can putt the lights out, especially on bent. So that's 66-1. Again, if that comes out, I think I'm going to put some money on that. And then last but not least, Max Homa. This is a guy who does really well at these kind of courses and events and in actual fields, and he's 150-1. Now, either Max typically is like hitting top fives or he's missing cuts. Now, I pulled this up just so you could take a quick look. This is his best 5 finishes over his career. Of course, he won this recent at the Genesis at Riviera. He also has 2 wins, and then he won at Quail Hollow Wells Fargo. So 2 very tough events, 2 of the comparable tournaments / courses I'll be looking at. And then right next is the 3M Open at Twin Cities the previous year. Again, I think is a good comp course for what you need to do. And then you got, again, the Genesis and then the Memorial. So with all that said, like I said, I'm not trying to sell you on a Max Homa bet, but I will for those kind of odds. This event, typically, I think it's over the last 15, the top, it's like top 13 guys win this. So what I'm saying is this is not a long shot event. This isn't, the Chesson Hadley pick or something. It's going to be one of the top guys. But if you're going to put a bet on a higher eye guy, I'm going to go with Max Homa. So that's my favorite bets right now. And that is it for the Northern Trust. So thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully that gets, again, as I always say, this is to kind of get the mind start thinking about the DFS plays, get some bets out quickly before odds start to shift, maybe not in your favor. And so with that said, if you would do me the honor and if you enjoy what I'm doing here, click the like button, share it with anybody else. Of course, subscribe. I've got that giveaway. And I mentioned that if I get to 1,000 subscribers before the, probably, I guess, the preview show for the Tour Championship, then I'm going to pick 2 winners and announce them. So subscribe. Tell me, who do you think is going to win this FedEx Cup playoffs? Just so you know, what I'm looking for is the whole playoffs, not who's just going to win the Northern, but who at the end is going to come out of this thing and be the winner. You had a Billy Horschel who barely made the FedEx Cup playoffs, win it. That was a few years ago. It can happen. Typically, it's the guys that are, that are up there that are going to win this thing. But I'm just saying it can be a dark horse. They could come and run the table. So you never know. And hey, if I can help you with anything, as always, hit me up in YouTube comments or follow me on Twitter Sphere at DFS Golf Guru. Thank you, guys. I'm actually going to be traveling, but I'm going to get my pick show. I'm probably going to work on it today and then get it out maybe before I leave, but I will be back Wednesday. So talk to you guys later. All the best to us this week, and let's have a great FedEx Cup playoffs. All right, take care.